right now is we're having two events in October, both on Thursday, October the 30th. So, blank it out on your calendar. The first will take place at the Highland Center at 12:30 in the afternoon. And there will be Dr. Michelle Losi of the International Raptor and Falconry Center will be making a presentation about vultures. And she will be bringing a vulture and probably a barn owl to that presentation. And there will be an opportunity for a photo op with a bird for a donation if you're interested. I thought it'd be cool to put on a Christmas card. So then that evening, courtesy of Eric Moore, we have a guest speaker here at the NHI at 7 o'clock. Her name is Sharon Steitler. She's also known as the Bird Chick. And she's traveled the world to work with birds. She is an expert on digiscoping and the author of 1001 Secrets Every Birder Should Know and a couple of other books. And she also dabbles in beekeeping. And you can go to the National Audubon website, and she has some articles on the website for you to peruse. I think it'll be a really fun evening, and we're going to kind of make it special. So just mark that out on your calendar. 7 o'clock, October 30th. Yeah. I mean, we might be a little bit earlier for social time, but the program will start at 7. And then I want to note a couple of other things. Someone reminded me to remind everybody about the Feed the Feeder. Art and Dolores deliver birdseed to different assisted living, nursing home, retirement places. And we take donations for the seed. Eric graciously helps us with the seed, but they do the deliveries. And so if you have a couple extra dollars, you might throw it in the Feed the Feeder. And also, if as Russ told me tonight, we don't send out notices about membership, but it is this is the time of year. So if you think that you haven't renewed and you want to, you can always send me an email because I'm the one that keeps the records too. Any other announcements? No? Okay, so let's get on with this. Our speaker tonight really needs no introduction. Many of you have been on a bird walk or a birding trip with Eric, visit with him at the Lookout, and read his article in the Daily Courier. I would like to thank Eric for his support of Prescott Audubon and for his service to our community as a city councilman. We really appreciate that. So I know we're all interested in this presentation, so welcome, Eric.
All right, I'm going to ditch the hat. I know, get a sunburn. Well, I'm so pleased to be here and so nice to see all of you here tonight. It's such an honor to be back and to present again to the Prescott Audubon Society. I look out in the audience and so many of you are such dear friends and I've known you for so long. It's just great to have you here. So in March of this year, I had the privilege of going to Cuba with a tour company called Holbrook Travel. Not sure if you've heard of Holbrook Travel. I was personally trying to arrange a trip that I was going to be guiding to Cuba, and I couldn't get the trip to fill because of the economy and everything was just kind of crazy. So I had just attached myself to a trip they already had scheduled. And so that way I still got to go to Cuba, which I was really happy to do. And I know I've been asked, you can see who I am, the guy with the orange scope. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I was asked how I was able to get into Cuba. There are a lot of restrictions for travel to Cuba, which is really unfortunate because it really hurts the economy and the people in Cuba. They need that American dollar, and we'll talk more about that too. But in order to go into Cuba, you have to have a cultural purpose, and there needs to be a cultural slant to the trip. And so as part of the tour, we had a full-time ornithologist, which is Sochi. I'll see if I can point her out. Sochi is right here in the green shirt where my pointer is. And then we had a full-time cultural guide right on the end, Attila. And turned out Attila was an amazing birder as well. So it's like we had 2 birding guides, which was just a bonus. And but Attila, born and raised, Sochi too, in Cuba, and he was attached to our tour group 24/7. He was with us from the time we met at the airport till the time we went home. In fact, I did an extension, so the trip that I signed up for was a week-long trip. And at the end of the trip, everybody went home, except for me. I did a 3-day extension, and Attila and I traveled together, just one-on-one, and he was my one-on-one guide. And we went to other parts of Cuba that the tour didn't take us to, and I was able to therefore see a lot more birds that we didn't see on the regular portion of the trip. So that was really special. So Cuba is an interesting island. It's the largest island in the West Indies. It's about 750 miles long. So it's a really long island. But at its widest point, its average is around 60 miles wide. So it's not a real wide island, but it's a very long island. And I'll just show you briefly kind of where we went. So Havana is right here. So we flew into Havana, and we spent most of our time in the western portion of Cuba, and then we came down to this area called Zapata. And that was the extent of the week-long trip. We just were on this western half of Cuba. When I did the extension, I was fortunate to pretty much travel diagonally across the country over to Cococayo, and there are a lot of keys, islands along the north shore of Cuba, and that's where I did my extension. It was a completely different habitat and completely different birds, added a lot of new birds to the trip list. So I just kind of want to give you some bearings on Cuba. So I did not get into any of this area at all in the far east. So kind of in the west and then in the middle part on the north shore. So because a big emphasis was cultural, we had a cultural experience every single day. So for example, our first day, Attila, our cultural guide, we did a walking tour of Old Town Havana. And we got to see all of the colorful buildings and all of the interesting architecture, and we got to see prisons and fortresses and historic buildings, and even saw a peregrine falcon flying over the city, lots of pigeons. But that was the cultural experience that was our introduction to Cuba. And we learned a lot about the history of Cuba and the different colonizations and conquering and who inhabited it. And so that was an important start. Just want to point out this guy in the bottom left-hand side here. You see he's got like a notepad and a pen. Everybody was trying to make a buck or trying to get an American dollar. And so they would get up next to you, and they'd stand next to you, and then they'd start drawing you, and they'd start sketching you, and they're looking at you, and they're sketching. And then they'd show you, and they want you to buy the sketch that they had just drawn of you. It's kind of like a caricature. And so we ran into several guys, and they were really good artists. But we had several experiences like that while we were walking around Havana. When we left Havana, our first region in the western part was Vinales. And it was absolutely beautiful. So I included some landscape pictures, kind of give you a picture of where we were and what it looked like. And it was very lovely. And so this is just one of the pictures that I took. A lot of the bird pictures I will not take credit for. I took them off the internet, but I took some of the pictures, and all of the videos that I'll be showing tonight are my videos. So I'll just tell you that. So for example, this is one of my videos. And it's kind of comical almost. Look closely at the young man riding. He's on his cell phone with a horse. So being in Havana, it was like being in any modern big city. Huge, tall skyscrapers, very modern. It's a city of over 2 million people. But you get outside of Havana, and there's basically abject poverty. It's like stepping back in time 100 years or more, as I will show you in a minute. So this is also in the Vinales region, just really picturesque and really beautiful. But here's another video. This is a family of 5. And this is their transportation. She's carrying a baby in her arms. So outside of Havana, Most of the transportation was walking, motorcycles, or horse-drawn carriages of one type or another, which was pretty interesting to see. They also still use cows, not really oxen in my opinion, but kind of like cows to plow their fields and to do their labor. And so I have a video here that I shot of this gentleman plowing his field. And I shot this from the road, and this guy was working hard. I mean, this is not easy work. And judging by his appearance, he was probably, similar in age to me, still plowing fields by cows. So very, very different than the existence we're living and experiencing here today. I will share something now because it was so poignant to me. Attila and I, because we did this extension and we got to spend probably 15 to 16 waking hours a day for 3 days, traveling, birding. We got a lot of deep personal conversations talking about his family, his parents, his children, about Cuba. He said 90% of the people in Cuba, when they wake up each day, their first thought is, what am I going to eat today? 90% of the population. This is a country where there's very little hope, and that really struck me. It was really sad. He said in the last 3 to 4 years, over 3 million people have fled Cuba. They've immigrated to other countries looking for a better life. And he said, I'm out of here as soon as I can get enough money. He has a 10-year-old and I think a 6-year-old. And he said, there's just no future. And so it's just a very poignant, powerful experience to visit Cuba. I just share that with you. But there's also a lot of pride in Cuba. They really take pride in their natural beauty and their landscape. This is an example of a sign at one of the biosphere reserves that we visited, and it's pointing out some of the native species or near endemics. The national bird is the Cuban Trogon, and we saw a lot of it, and I'll show you some pictures. This is a near endemic. It occurs in the West Indies. It's very common. It's called the West Indian woodpecker, and this is an endemic. It's the Cuban oriole, and then this is an endemic. It's a Cuban toady, and we saw all of these. I really like to key in on endemics when I'm visiting someplace for perhaps the first and the last time, because I feel like it's my one chance to see these birds in my lifetime. For example, a couple years ago I went to Puerto Rico and they had 18 endemics on the island, and I saw all 18, and I was so happy about that because it's like, well, I don't need to go back to Puerto Rico. I didn't miss one. But on our trip, there's somewhere between 25 and 28 endemics, depending on what you count and what you don't count. One is the Cuban macaw, which has been extinct since the 1850s, but it's still in the bird books, which I find fascinating. They still have an image of the Cuban macaw in their bird book, and there's no chance of seeing it, obviously. It's been extinct for over 170 years, which is really, really sad. There's a few other species that are presumed extinct. One is the Cuban kite, one is the Cuban rail, and I think there's one more. I think they were saying that the guideline was there had to have been no documented sighting for at least 50 years before they would classify it as officially extinct. So like the Zapata rail, it hasn't been seen since the 1980s, so it's not considered extinct. But of course we didn't see it, even though it's supposedly an endemic. Moving on. They have some of the more common birds that we have. I actually took this picture, so I'm going to digress for half a second. About a month before I went on the trip, my optics specialist, Ryan Holloway, told me about a new product for digiscoping. If you're not familiar with digiscoping, it's using your iPhone or a single lens reflex camera to take photographs through a spotting scope. So the spotting scope becomes your lens, and the phone is your camera, and it just uses a simple ring that fits over the eyepiece, and it's magnetic, and then you have a phone case that has a magnetic piece, and if you want to take a picture, you just put that on there and you take your picture. And so a lot of the pictures that you're going to see today were taken using this system, And I just want to share it with you because it's so simple. For so many years, people have been trying to take pictures, and they're holding their phone, and they're trying to get it right, and they're fiddling with it. And this magnet just forces it to line up perfectly, 100% every single time. So it's a pretty cool system, so I had to show it to you today. But I like that picture because it was just kind of cool how their heads were opposite one another. So I'm going to show you in order taxonomically some of the birds that we saw. So these are not in the order of the region or the area or the timing of the trip that we saw it. So this is, I just heard Sue, West Indian whistling duck. Remember, Sue, I have big ears. You're good. You can identify them all if you want. No? Okay. So every picture I'm sharing with you is something that we saw on the trip. White-cheeked pintail, scaly-naped pigeon. There are a lot of different kinds of pigeons or doves in Cuba. White-crowned pigeon, just really, really beautiful birds. But what struck me the most, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this experience, I had never seen what's called a quail dove. So there's a family of birds called quail doves, and there are quite a few in Cuba. And I think they get their name because of their plump appearance. They kind of look quail-like in shape, but it's actually a dove. It's not a quail. So they're called quail doves. And there was one called a blue-headed quail dove, and I thought, oh man, if I could just see a blue-headed quail dove on my trip, because I thought that would just be amazing, never having seen a quail dove in my life. So they take us out, and we're in the Zapata region. They take us out to an area where there's like a blind. And if you're familiar with blinds, it's kind of in Africa they call it a hide, but it's a shelter. And this one was not wrapped around, it was just a straight line. It was probably 40 feet long, and it had holes of different sizes at different heights that you could look through, like peek through to see the bird. And in front of the blind, for quite a good distance, in a forested habitat, it was kind of like an old roadway in the sense that it was kind of clear. It was a clearing. So these birds are usually very secretive, and they're in the understory, and they're in shrubs and bushes where you just don't ever see them. So our group of 12 people, 10 participants, 2 guides, were lined up, and we're looking, and we're looking, and we're looking, and all of a sudden, one walks around the corner of the blind, and he's as close as your shoe. He's literally right there. And we're like, doing this, it's like, not even realizing they could care less. So if you've ever heard of chumming, you know what chumming is? You put out some food to try to get them to come. Well, the local bird guides have contacts with the local residents, and they pay them money to do some chumming. And they feed them rice. And so they throw rice down on the ground, and the birds come in for the rice, like bird seed, so to speak. And so they're just used to coming in every day and getting fed, just like a bird feeder in your yard. And so here I was thinking, I hope I get to see this bird. Well, I got to see this bird so close it wasn't funny. I actually saw 4 different quail dove species on the trip. This is a ruddy quail dove. Pardon me, Key West quail dove. My apologies. And white or gray-fronted quail dove, beautiful colors, just absolutely beautiful colors, the iridescent quality. And here's a video I shot, and this is how I shot the video. I was holding my cell phone, and I was down on the ground, and I was just going like this as they were walking around 3 or 4 feet from me, and sometimes they'd get almost too close. So here's 2 species of quail doves right here feeding, and I shot this. And you can see all the seeds, the rice on the ground. And so our whole group is like lined up against this blind, and we're now facing the other direction. Instead of facing the roadway, we're now facing this way, not realizing they would just walk right around the edge of the blind. So that was pretty spectacular. Oh, that was the ruddy. This is the Key West quail dove. My apologies. They have similar markings. This is I saw this species on the extension. So nobody else on the trip saw this species because they didn't do the extension. And I got some really good videos using my iPhone and my scope of them. So that was really cool. Um, they have a couple species of cuckoos. This is called a great lizard cuckoo. And this is a video that I shot. Unfortunately, he didn't really turn around, but I just thought you could see how pretty he was with that beautiful tail. And he was at one point like on a fence, and like a wooden rail fence, and he looked so much like our roadrunners, the way he just moved. I mean, they're all cuckoos, you know, roadrunners in the cuckoo family, but I just thought that was really, really interesting. This is a Cuban nightjar, an endemic, and we went out into this area at dusk, and they did use calls, you know, recordings at night, but they had pretty good lights, and I was thrilled. Again, it's an endemic. My only chance to see it is to go to Cuba. If I don't go to Cuba, I'll never see this bird in my lifetime. I'm in Cuba, I want to see it. And it was a really large nightjar, much larger than I anticipated. Very dark, very cryptic. Going from large to small. The world's smallest bird, many of you probably know this, lives in Cuba, the bee hummingbird. The female weighs just a little over 2 grams. Now, a nickel weighs 5 grams. The male weighs 1.95 grams. So even if you took 2 male bee hummingbirds, it wouldn't weigh as much as a nickel. It's just crazy to anticipate and to think about. Now, we went to a house, and I'll show you a picture of it later. It was kind of like a pay yard. Are you familiar with the pay yard concept? It's pretty common in southeastern Arizona, where there are properties that are very birdy, and the owner or organization that owns the property allows you to just put like a $5 thing in the can. You go in their property and you can bird. Well, we were at the Bay of Pigs on the southern shore of Cuba, and there was a pay yard, and our guides took us there, and I went there on my own too, probably twice. And this was the only place that I saw the bee hummingbird on the entire trip. I never saw one in the wild. So I'm grateful that we had that opportunity to go to a pay yard where they had hummingbird feeders, and I was able to see it. So I have a quick video right here. That's a syringe with sugar water in it, and here's the quick video. And that's the male bee hummingbird. So 1.95 grams, pretty incredible. This is also an endemic. It's called a Cuban emerald. It's a fairly large hummingbird. There are only 3 hummingbird species on the island, 2 endemics and 1 migratory, ruby-throated hummingbird. So the ruby-throated hummingbird, you know, Cuba's only about 90 miles from the United States, so it's pretty close. And so a lot of the North American species, of course, migrate using the West Indies or winter in the West Indies. But this was a really beautiful hummingbird, a large hummingbird, long-tailed, long-winged. Looks kind of like a Cooper's hawk, doesn't it? So our very first full day after leaving Havana, we went to the National Botanical Gardens, and very large facility with many different habitats, which is typical within botanical gardens. You know, you have an area that's like desert, an area that represents Japan. You'll have a Japanese garden, an area that represents Australia, an area. Well, anyways, we were there, and this is called a Goonlock's hawk, and it's a sipiter, and our guides were so excited that we found a pair of them. We found a nest. Yeah, and they were just over the moon that we found this species, because they said most trips don't get to see this species. But we actually saw a pair of the Goonlock's hawk. So that was quite thrilling. We also saw a lot of Cuban blackhawks, another endemic, particularly coastal. They're really not inland so much, they're more coastal. And I shot a video of this one here I shot with my scope. You can tell it's kind of windy. But a very large buteo, and it's, you know, similar to the common black hawk or great black hawk, but pretty abundant in Cuba. So that was cool to see. Owls were a real highlight. I feel like owls are one of the gaps I have on my life list, especially here in North America. There's a lot of owls I just haven't seen here in North America. And this is called a bare-legged owl. Now I'm going to, no feathers on the legs, okay? I'm going to quickly start this video because it's a fairly long video while I talk. Video quality is not very good. I'll explain the situation. So you remember the rice and the blind, and they have contacts that live in the forest. Well, our guides drive up to a house, and we get on a little single-track trail, and we go to the backyard, and there's a palm tree where the top has just fallen off, and it's got hollowed out on the inside. Watch what happens here. I love this video, the ending of it. He's looking at our group, and he decides, I've had enough of you guys. I shot that with my scope, but it was just so cool. So literally, this is how it happened. This is a different species. So they take us to this private property where the homeowner has a nesting bare-legged owl on his property in this old palm tree, and they say, okay, line up, get over here, you line up, and so we're all lined up, and the guy takes a stick and goes tap, tap, tap on the trunk and the owl just pops right out like out of a chimney, and he just sits there. And then, he was looking at us, like, hey, you disturbed my nap. And after a while, I just go back down the hole. So that was pretty cool, because again, it's like, oh, I hope I see a bare-legged owl. It's like my one chance to see a bare-legged owl in my life. And I'm telling you, literally, I saw every single endemic on the island that is not probably extinct. And we saw a lot of the near endemic. So it was a very successful trip. This is the Cuban pygmy owl. So you've heard of the ferruginous pygmy owl. There's so many different pygmy owls, northern pygmy owl. This is an endemic to Cuba, and we saw them many times, which was a lot of fun. Really cute little owl. And then Stygian owl. We actually found a nest at the botanical gardens where one was sitting on the nest, and you could see about this much of the bird. You could see the feathers and about this much up. Wasn't a great look, but it's like, okay, I can count it. Well, that was day one. Well, when we got down to the Zapata region, the guides knew about this tree in town where they often can be found at night. So we went down there, and sure enough, we found them. I think I found them every night. So really, it's a big owl. It's a really big owl. Really impressive. So that was Stygian. Yeah. Am I saying it correctly? I think so. Yeah, Stygian owl. This is kind of the piece of resistance in Cuba, the Cuban Trogon, their national bird. It's funny because when we were there, they were making comments that the Trogon had every color of their flag, but it's not totally true. But it's a thing they're proud of. But it's the only Trogon on the island. It's endemic. It's not found anywhere else in the world. It has this really cool pattern and tail feather structure. And I actually took a video, and watch as he vocalizes. His whole body vibrates. His whole body shakes. And so when he sings, his tail, everything just kind of vibrates. But we saw a lot of them. They were fairly common on the island, so that was really fun to see. Another native species is a tody, T-O-D-Y, Cuban tody. So it's an endemic, and it's maybe this big. I mean, it's tiny, 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 and it eats insects and it darts. I mean, it just like has springs for its feet. I mean, it's like just jumps off a branch, catches an insect, and then it lands somewhere else. And then you're like, you lose it, and then you re-find it, and then you're on it, and then it just takes off, grabs another insect, and you lose it, and then you find it again. Just really a beautiful, beautiful bird. And I was thinking maybe I could play a vocalization. What do I do with my phone? Sign of old age. That's embarrassing. Sorry. Wow. All right, Art. I'm hearing you laughing at me. Let's see if I can play the song of the toady, or the call. I did want to play a few. So see if my volume's all the way up. Put it near this. So it's pretty easy to find because of that unique vocalization. It was very easy to hear. It was very hard to see because it's green and it's in the foliage like a leaf. Very hard to see, but it was really a cute little bird. I'm going to do another vocalization here in a minute when I find my phone. This is a Cuban green woodpecker, really small little woodpecker. I got a video of one right here. This is one on a termite mound, and sorry, there's some there's some conversations going on as we're bird watching that got captured in the video. But this guy, he could care less about us. He was so focused on that termite mound. He was just really enjoying digging in there. So there's the West Indian woodpecker that I showed you. It was on that poster. Very common. This is another endemic, Fernandina's flicker. You look at it and you say, yeah, that's a flicker. I mean, it looks like a flicker. But it has such an interesting pattern and very uncommon. I think we only saw it once or twice the entire trip. So it was really a special experience to see it. And then this is a fairly common bird in North America, but it was March, so it was down in Cuba for the winter. And I took a video of it. It's a yellow-bellied sapsucker. And it was working on a palm tree. And that palm tree has had better days. It's like, it's just ringed with holes all the way up and down it. So, yeah, it's a sapsucker, and they make holes. So, but it was so close, it's like I can't not take a video of this. It was just too close and too cool. So in the Zapata region, the Zapata is the largest wetland in Cuba. I can't remember how many square miles, but it's a very, very large wetlands area. And one day we took a bus and we went out a long single track road one way for miles and miles and miles. So it probably took us an hour and a half to get to our destination. And when we got to where we stopped, then we got into little canoes, and then we had oarsmen. They were just using the sticks just to push against the bottom. They weren't paddling. And they would navigate through this channel. And apparently this channel was built probably in the 1800s when sugarcane was a big part of their economy, and that's how they would transport sugarcane, was through these canals, kind of like the Erie Canal concept. But we were probably in 4 different canoes, and we went here specifically to see one species, the Zapata wren. And I'm sorry the picture's not next, because like I said, I put the pictures in taxonomical order, but I'll show you the wren. But we literally, we just went and went and went in this canal, got out, they all had a stand, they played the call, and this wren just popped in and just started singing and singing and just moving from reed to reed. It's like reeds, like cattails, and it was probably as close to me and John, that close. And so got great looks at it. It was the only time we saw that species on the entire trip, was that one experience right then. So they also have an endemic parrot. Guess what it's called? Cuban parrot. Yeah. Anything that starts with Cuba, is an endemic, right? Fairly common, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the pet trade in a minute. And I shot a video of this one with my scope. He was kind of walking back and forth. I'm sorry, it's cut off a little bit. I had to kind of keep adjusting my scope. But we saw him in the wild on several occasions, but I also saw him in cages. And I'll show you and talk about that too. So, but really a pretty parrot, really a very colorful, pretty parrot. And then they also have a Cuban parakeet, which is endemic, and we got to see on several occasions. And boy, do they blend in a tree. You'll see a flock, and they're flying, and they fly into a tree, and they're just gone. Because they're just the same color of the tree. They're just green, and they just totally disappear in the foliage, even though they're right there. Another endemic, Cuban peewee. Now, the day I arrived in Havana, I was there earlier than the rest of the group, and so Attila met me at the hotel after getting there by taxi, and he made arrangements for me to get another taxi to go to the old botanical gardens, which were in downtown Havana, right in the city. Just huge traffic everywhere, but there's an old botanical gardens in town. And so this is one of the first life birds I got on Cuba because they were in this botanical garden, which was pretty cool. This is a giant kingbird. They had several species of kingbirds, and I just thought I'd share this one. Only saw it one time, and I saw it on the extension. So again, without doing that extension, this is a species I would have missed. This is another bird I saw on the extension. It's a Cuban vireo. And it wasn't down in the Zapata region, it was up in the Cococayo region. So by doing that extension, I was able to add this to the trip list and my life list. They also have two species of crow. They have a palm crow. You'll enjoy this story. I left the group. I separated from the group when their trip ended, and Attila and I got on our way, just the two of us, in a car. And he had talked with somebody to get some pointers on where we might find some of the endemics that we were still looking for. We're driving. Pull over. I mean, this is just a 2-lane country road in Cuba, just. We get out, there's this guy who owns some property, and he goes and talks to him in Spanish, and we get permission to go on his property. And there's some palm trees in a little gully, like a little draw. We walk over there it is. It's life bird, check, They're vocalizing, which was nice because it's a very distinctive vocalization. It's in the palm tree. Yep, that's the palm crow, right? No, but it was vocalizing, which was nice. Got it in the scope. And as we're leaving, Attila tells me that the property owner's like, why would somebody come all the way out here to see a stupid bird? And it's like, and I'm thinking, if that guy only knew that he could charge money to have people come on his property to see a Cuban crow, because that was the only time I saw it on the entire trip. It was on his property. They're not common. Then we also saw the Cuban crow. And it's a much larger crow, more raven-like in appearance. This was a little more common. I saw it several times, whereas the other one I only saw one time at that guy's property. Yeah, they were both in palms. Yeah. But they look different. They have a Cuban martin, similar to our purple martin. Very common in the city. I saw a lot of these in Havana. In the Cococayo region, which is the extension, I saw the Cuban gnatcatcher. So again, this is a species I saw that nobody else on the trip got to see because they didn't do the extension. Cute little gnatcatcher. Bahama mockingbird. You look at it and say, yeah, that's a mockingbird, but you can tell it's different. It's got some streaking and just different coloration pattern. I got a brief video of it. I'm sorry I didn't get a longer video, but. Yep, only on the extension, the Cococayo region. Yep. This is the other one I wanted to do a vocalization for. So this is one day when we were in the Vinales region. This was our target bird for the whole day, just to see this one bird. It's a Cuban solitaire. And if you're familiar with solitaires, they have interesting vocalization. And I could start typing Cuban, but then about 10 birds would come up. But if I type in solitaire, only one bird will come up. So they only have 2 recordings in Merlin for this species. So it's not a well-documented species. It was so cool to watch it sing. It was up high on an open exposed perch, and his beak could just open so wide, and we had it in the scope, and we were just watching it sing. It was just really, it's like starts out slow, and then it builds, and it gets varied. So our guides were very excited that we got to see the Cuban solitaire. Moving on. This is a Zapata sparrow. So we saw it in the Zapata region where we saw the Zapata wren. Interestingly, if we were to look at that map of Cuba, it occurs in 2 places in Cuba. On the southwest side by the ocean in the Zapata region, and then on the very northeast side of the island. They're completely separate populations, and it's the same species of sparrow. So I'm not sure how that worked out. But I got amazing shots in video of one up in the Coco region. That was, we saw it as a group, which was nice in the Zapata area, but then I got to see it much better. And then this is a western spindalis. I'm not even sure what family a spindalis is in. Do you know, Tom? It's not a tanager. It's not, I mean, what? Yeah, he throws out the Latin name. Okay. But, okay, thank you. Well, we saw several western spindalis, and that is such a colorful, beautiful bird. That was really a thrill to see. This is the home I was mentioning, Casa Ana birding, like the pay yard where you could just put some money in a pot and just go on the property. One day when I went there by myself, when we had some free time, I saw like 30 species in the yard. Just, you know, hummingbirds and trogons, and I've got some video, I'll show you some. So this is a short little video of a black-throated blue warbler in their backyard. They have feeders, and this one's getting a drink. But lots of warblers in their yard, lots of woodpeckers in their yard. This is the Orient warbler, which was also on the extension. So I was the only person in the group that got to see this. And then this is the Cuban oriole, and we saw this on several occasions, and I actually got a video. So I shot this video. So yeah, he's really, and there's red-shouldered blackbirds in the same bird bath. They'll encroach here in a minute, and you'll get to see the red-shouldered blackbird. But they're just having a ball in the bird bath. So the oriole leaves, and then this guy kind of takes center stage here in a minute. But I got pictures of catbirds and all kinds of birds bathing in that same dish. Just birds were coming and going, coming and going. So it was fun. I was just sitting in a chair, just watching. So there's the red-shouldered, very similar, of course, to our red-winged blackbird. And then they have a tawny-shouldered blackbird, and we saw both of them, and they're both endemic. There's the Coco, and this is on the North Shore, and it's just really pretty beaches, really, really pretty area of Cuba. It's kind of their touristy area for the wealthy. People that have money in Cuba will go there to vacation with their families. So this is the story I was going to tell you about caged birds. So when I was up in the Coco region, we were staying in a hotel that looked directly at this house. And if you look up here, you'll see a bird cage right there, a little one, and right there is another one, and then that's an air conditioning unit. There were 3 separate bird cages. And then in the breezeway between these 2 green buildings, there's a bird cage right here. This bird cage had the Cuban parrot in it. Really sad. And then these 3, I don't remember the different species. I know one was a Cuban bullfinch, which is an endemic. Literally, when I was in Zapata, anytime I had free time, I was, of course, birding on my own. I don't sit in the hotel. So I went out into the forest, and as I was going into the forest, a man was walking out of the forest with a bird cage with a bird in it. And unfortunately, they just don't really understand the impact that they're having on native bird populations in their own country with these endemic species. And so it was really sad to see endemics in these cages that should be in the wild and the impact that's having. So I just wanted to share that with you because I witnessed it firsthand. Coco region, some spoonbills, little green heron. There's the tawny-winged blackbird, the Cuban blackbird, so that's an endemic. Greater Antillean grackle. So this is a really pretty little bird. And I got a video of this one also bathing. He was really enjoying this. So I shot that video with my scope. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then that's the Zapata wren that I was talking about that we saw in the Zapata region when we took the little canoes out the canal. And like I said, we only saw one on the entire trip. So it would be very hard to see in the reeds because you can't see, I mean, there's just no visibility in the reeds. Then this is the Cuban bullfinch. This is one of the ones that was in the cages on that house, in the front of that house. And this is actually the species that I saw that man carrying in the cage when he was walking out of the forest. He caught a Cuban bullfinch. So it's really hard to see that. Our guide talked a lot about it. This is the Cuban grassquit, and very pretty. They feed down on the ground like sparrows, or like, like kind of like sparrows. Grassquit, they're eating these grass seeds, and you can hardly see them. They're just down on the ground, and it's like, oh, there's birds right there. Really pretty. And then this is a smooth-billed ani. Anis were pretty common in Cuba, and I shot a video of this guy. So here's a video of the ani that I shot with my scope. Yeah. Looks kind of prehistoric, doesn't it? So that concludes my pictures. And so I thought I'd just share a little bit of information. Maybe we could have the lights up, Robert, just for a second. I want to thank Sally Ohanessian. She let me borrow her Birds of Cuba book, and that was great. You know, I studied this book a lot before I left, and I was, you look at these pictures in anticipation before you go. I was like, man, I hope I see that, or I hope I see that, and saw every one of them. Saw every endemic that there was to see that isn't considered extinct. So I just thought I'd share a few numbers with you and some of the species names. And if you want to come up, I've got a species list. So this is a list of all the species observed. There were certainly a lot of species that we find in North America in Cuba, like great blue heron, tricolored heron, little blue heron, snowy egret, great egret, green heron, great blue heron. So there's a lot of overlap with birds that we see frequently in North America. But I saw 169 species for the trip. I had 44 separate checklists in eBird, and 38 of the species were lifers. So for me, that's a lot of life birds in one trip. I also have with me my checklist. So if you want to just go through it and look at notes, or just the days we observed the different species, you're welcome to come up and look at that. So there's my species lists, my checklist, the Birds of Cuba book. And then, so I'll just share some of the names of the birds. You saw pictures of most of these. So the endemics that we saw were Goonlock's hawk, Cuban blackhawk, blue-headed quail dove, gray-fronted quail dove, bare-legged owl, Cuban pygmy owl, Cuban nightjar, Bee hummingbird, Cuban trogon, Cuban toady, Cuban green woodpecker, Fernandina's flicker, Cuban parakeet, Cuban vireo, Zapata wren, Cuban gnatcatcher, Cuban solitaire, yellow-headed warbler, orient warbler, Cuban grassquit, Zapata sparrow, Cuban oriole, red-shouldered blackbird, and Cuban blackbird. Those were the endemics we saw. And then they have a lot of near endemics, so meaning they occur in the West Indies, but they're not strictly confined or restricted to just Cuba. So this is my list of near endemics. West Indian duck, whistling duck, plain pigeon. Cuban parrot is on that list. I guess it's just found in Cuba. Great lizard cuckoo, Antillean palm swift, Cuban emerald, West Indian woodpecker, Cuban pewee, Lasagra flycatcher, loggerhead kingbird, giant kingbird, thick-billed vireo, palm crow, Cuban crow, red-legged thrush, Bahama mockingbird, olive-capped warbler, western spindalis, Cuban bullfinch is now considered an endemic, greater Antillean grackle, tawny-shouldered blackbird. So saw 21 near endemics and all the endemics. So it was really a rewarding trip. Would I go back? Probably not. Not because I didn't enjoy it. It's just because I'm running out of time. There's a lot of places that I want to go to that I haven't been yet. I can't afford to go to the same place twice when there's so many places I've never been to once. So I hate to say it that way, but I just feel like I need to continue to visit new places. So I'll take questions and then we'll wrap up.
So about your vocalization stuff,
Yeah.
is it always breeding season?
No, I mean, it is semi-tropical, but no.
Food, so
Yeah,
they
yeah.
singing because
I was there in March.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's really breeding season in the tropics. It's starting already. Good question.
So you've got good songs.
Yeah, really good songs. Yes. Hot, humid. Yeah. I don't mind it though. I don't care what the weather is. I'm seeing good birds. I'm game. So, Andre, did you have a question? Not that I'm aware of. One of the cultural, I didn't tell you about all the other cultural experiences. One day, we had this cool experience. There's a leading, he would be like the David Sibley of Cuba. His name is Nils Navarro. We actually went to his home, and our whole group sat in his living room, and he showed us, he's doing a bird book on the birds of Cuba, and he's painting these amazing plates. I mean, he had all the plates, and he was showing us original plate after plate. It hasn't even been published yet. And so there's some really good ornithologists on the island, and it's really an evolving, now that it's been opened up to tourism a little bit more, people are finding birds that maybe they didn't really know occurred on the island, because most Cubans aren't bird watchers, right? They're very poor, they don't have access to binoculars, they don't have field guides. There's very few people who have disposable income, disposable time, the ability to go bird watching that are native Cubans, right? So, I mean, you have to be a professional, ornithologist or somebody, a scientist that's really pursuing this. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in Cuba. We saw 2 species that really weren't documented. One was a greater scaup. So they have in their book that lesser scaup occur there, but we actually saw a greater scaup. And the other one was pipit, American pipit, in the farm fields. And they didn't have any documentation of that. So I think as more groups from North America, spend time and really get into the country, that there's going to be more knowledge and more discovery of species that have probably been there, that just no documentation of it. Yes, that's in the book too. Yeah. Yeah, let's see. It's in the book, but so is the macaw. If I can put my finger on it real quickly. There wasn't a lot of discussion about it, to be honest with you, but maybe it's not in the colored plates. It might be just a black and white drawing back in the species treatment area, so I can't put my finger right on it. But yeah, really no discussion about it. Yeah, that's a bad answer, but yes. Yeah, yeah. Fed rice, yeah. I think it's a wild rice. It's not like the processed rice that we buy in this. No, it still had like the little sheath on it, like you see in wild rice. So I guess that's what they eat naturally. I mean, they grow a lot of rice on the island. Yeah, John. Practically. I've had so many experiences because I've had my binoculars where other birders have missed things. Just a quick side note, and this is a completely different story, but I can remember when I was in Brazil many years ago, and we were supposed to meet like in this little cabana at night to tally our list for the day, and I had my binoculars, and a tropical screech owl flew in and landed under the cabana, and guess who had their binoculars and got to see it? Me, because I'm prepared. So yeah, I take my binoculars everywhere I go. And my wife's nodding her head. Our kids, last year was our 40th wedding anniversary, and our kids gave us one of those Aura devices. Are you familiar with Aura, A-U-R-A? It's like a photo album that scrolls. It's electronic. And so the pictures change every 15 seconds or whatever. And every picture of me, guess what I'm wearing? Binoculars. It's like binoculars. It's just like, that's just my trademark. But it pays off. It does. Got to be prepared. Any other? Yes, Carol. Yeah. So I'm actually doing a trip for Holbrook travel to Panama in January. And many people from Prescott are going on that trip. It's filled. So quite a few people from Prescott will be going with me. So yeah, looking forward. I've never been to Panama. No, I didn't. No. Yeah. Oh boy, I'm getting grilled. This is like the conversation I had when I was doing a speaking engagement one time, and I was trying to explain why Jay's Bird Barn was called Jay's Bird Barn, because my son was named Jay. Some guy raises his hand. He's like, "Are all your kids named bird names? Is your daughter named Robin?" It's like, so I do get a lot of harassing, but I don't mind because I'm passionate about what I do and I love what I do. I'll just share one thing in closing, because I was sharing with Dave and Cheryl, but my business has created a lot of opportunities to do birding. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a phone call from Swarovski Optics. And I know quite a few of you own Swarovskis, and we sell Swarovskis. But I was invited by Swarovskis to attend what's called a Focus Dealer event, which starts Monday in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where it's an all-expense-paid trip by Swarovski, where they're going to be unveiling new products that are coming to the market in December and January. And I don't even know what the new products are. And I have to sign the non-disclosure agreement because I'll get to see them next week, but I can't talk about it until they're released. So I'm really looking forward to, and maybe I'll get one of those owls I'm missing on my life list. I've never seen a great gray. And, we're going to Yellowstone, yeah. Yeah, I checked eBird already. They're there. So I'll sleep with my binoculars. I know. I want to see one. I've never seen one. Any other questions? I know we probably need to wrap up. I could talk all night and you'd get tired of it, but I won't get tired of it. Tom. It's in its own family. Thank you. Yeah. Excellent. Beautiful bird. Really beautiful. Well, if you want to come up and visit, feel free to come up and visit if you want to look at anything. Thank you for coming tonight.